On this episode of Game Shack, I wrap up my virtual pinball build coming up next. Hey everybody, it's JDV here for EvilGeniusEntertainment.com. Thank you for stopping by another episode of Game Shack. Okay, I'll jump right into it. For anybody who's been watching the channel over the last couple of months, I have been in search of the best virtual pinball game I could afford. Thanks to a series of delays and just unavailabilities from basically just about everybody, I ended up building my own machine. Now I do still have an At Games legendary pinball game on the way. When it gets here, I will give that the whole rundown, and I'll also do a compare and contrast video. But I'll just start the video by saying I've ended up being very, very happy with the build that I did do. Turned out much better than I ever had expected. Now, yes, I do have some carpentry experience. I have put together a bunch of these arcade one-up machines, and I had actually built a few different one of these kind of arcade one-up machines from scratch myself. So I have a little bit of experience in terms of both, using tools, working with wood, and putting these type of machines together. So if you do this, please, be safe, use your goggles, don't be drunk or anything like that. But it is it's a rewarding experience, and it is something that you probably could do over the course. If you took your time just on weekends, you could probably knock it out in about a month. And that's about how long it took me from start to finish, learning everything I had to learn. But you probably could even maybe do it in two weekends, again, if you just paced yourself and took your time. So after you have the first side part cut out, all you have to do is put it on your second piece of wood and trace it out, and then go ahead and cut that, and you should have something that is pretty close. And of course, you can already kind of start to see how it's going to look when it's all put together. Now, what the angle that you want, that's completely up to you. I'll leave the dimensions down below in the description. But of course, you can build this pretty much however you want to build it. Really, the only requirement is that it holds the screen, and that it can hold the computer and whatever else you have in there, like an amplifier or whatever. So it does not have to be this deep at all, or long, whatever. But the one benefit of having these bigger pieces, though, is the game does not move around so much when you're pushing on it. I wasn't sure that the aluminum legs I used were going to be strong enough, or that the box was going to be strong enough, but it was just fine. Everything, when it all screws together, it's very strong. Okay, so this 1x6 at the top there, that's just, they call it 1x6, but it's really more like 5.5 inches wide. But it's pretty cheap. It's the only actual wood I use, and I just use that at the top just kind of out of convenience sake. And I use that piece of wood there to tell me how wide the top was. And then at the end of that piece of wood, that's where I started my angle. So I had my 1x6 up there at the top of the wood. I measured that, and then that's where I started the angle. So here I attached the back brace. It's really just scrap. I don't fill in the entire back because I want to be able to reach in and connect wires and everything like that. And it's already a fairly heavy little beast just as it is. This MDF board is not light. If you want it to go lighter, you could definitely use pine. Maybe even cherry. Cherry is used a lot in pinball tables, real pinball tables, because it's kind of a combination of strength and lightness. But you can use anything you want. You could use scrap wood, really anything. It really doesn't matter, but just take your time, get it all even. And I was pretty lucky in all of the cuts I made. I don't think I had to recut anything. So I got pretty lucky in that. So you might have to buy some more wood if you mess up the cut or whatever like that. It definitely helps to have a second pair of hands. Like, it would have been nice if I had someone helping me with putting these little pieces of wood up. And I just used drywall screws. I didn't use anything too fancy. Here I am measuring out 2-foot sections of the aluminum that I bought. I bought an 8-foot length of aluminum, and then I just measured every 2 feet, and then I cut it out, just every 2 feet with this hacksaw. Now, I ended up cheating here. I don't show it, but I actually use my miter saw to cut these after this first piece is cut. And I had never used a miter saw to cut aluminum, but it actually works pretty well. You know, your mileage might vary. Always be safe and wear glasses. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just drilling in the holes to put in my bolts. I put 2 bolts on the side, 1 bolt in the front, just figuring it'd just be aesthetically more pleasing. Make sure you leave yourself enough leeway when you cut these holes that you're going to have enough room to put in your washers and bolts. I mean, you can kind of see there I have just enough room after I put in my bolt to stick my washer on top of that and then my nut. So when you're drilling your hole on that leg, you want to kind of cheat it over a little bit so that you're going to have enough room for your washer and your bolt. It really isn't that bad. And there you go, I had just enough room. And I wasn't sure that this was going to be strong enough, but it's plenty strong enough. I've had this now for over a month and whacked the heck out of it, and it's just fine. Once you have the box, it's a lot easier to envision how the rest of the project's going to go. It's amazing how much that helps. And see, there I've already installed the base staker. Just might as well get it out of the way. Now, one thing I would say is I probably should have painted this before I put on my legs. I didn't film it. But what I had to do is I had to mask off those legs with masking tape and then paint it. I should have just painted it right away, but I wasn't sure it was all going to fit together. But, it wasn't that big a deal to mask. So if you can see this little edge that I'm touching here and here, that's actually what the TV set sits on. It's just 2 little pieces of wood that I had kind of measured just slightly below the top. And because these new TVs are so light, that $108 TV, the ONN TV I got from Walmart, just sits on these things, no problem. And so here I am going ahead and I'm drilling the holes for my buttons. There's one kind of bigger hole there. That's for my female USB port that you'll see a little bit later on in the video. Again, I kind of just basically eyeballed it. And that is using a 1.25" drill bit. Now you can get 2 kinds. You can kind of have this paddle style, or you can get a drill bit that's used to cut holes into doors for like doorknobs and things. The paddles are actually a lot quicker. You make very quick work out of this through MFD board using this style drill bit. I would advise you use that style and buy a new one. They're only maybe $5-6 new, and you'll save yourself so much pain and effort if you go ahead and get a new one, because it'll just be so much easier. Here I am just kind of measuring with my hand where I think the flipper button should be. And the other little circle you see there is for the nudge. So I'm just double checking to make sure that feels right to me. And as it turns out, it was a pretty good place to put it. I wasn't sure at first if it would work, but nobody's had a problem. The kids can play it, my wife can play it. So even though I did it to fit my hands, you can see there's enough leeway there for a smaller hand. And I'm just drilling out the holes there on the other side of the game. Again, just kind of eyeballing it, just based on where my hand was, as opposed to really any kind of strict measurement based on the other one. You can see, if you can do this outside, do it outside, because it makes a heck of a lot of dust whenever you cut that particular material. All right, so there it is. All the holes are cut. Have the 2 little braces, front and back, little front piece there to, I guess, put your beer on or whatever. I'm just double checking. And here my buddy Todd is helping me. Thank you, Todd. We're essentially just putting together the back box. So how I measured this, and that's 1x6 wood. It's the only actual wood I use in this build. And I just kind of put my computer monitor, the Dell 20-inch, the one that everybody uses. I just put that, just measured it off and just built a box that would snugly hold the monitor, because I knew I was just going to use Gorilla Tape to hold it in. And that is all that I even up to this second, that's all that I'm using to hold the monitor in is Gorilla Tape. Well, that and the fact that the box is so snug. So just take your time, build the box. Again, it does help if you have someone there to help kind of hold it all together for you. It was a real help to have. He showed up right as it was getting tough, so I lucked out in that I had a second pair of hands here. And so I'm just putting in the final screws here in the box. And that is all it is for that second monitor. It's just a wood box, nothing more than that. Now, again, they call it 1x6, 1 inch wide and 6 inches across or whatever, but it's not. It's more like 5.5 inches. But that's plenty. That is more than enough to hold most. If you have, let's say, a 19-inch LCD monitor or old Dell, you should have plenty of room inside that box to hold whatever monitor you want. Now, you could use a bigger monitor. You know, just build that top box to whatever it is that you have here. So here we are, just making sure that the monitor fits in. And I'm pretty sure we just actually went ahead and we just mounted it in right off the bat, and it's pretty much hasn't changed since I painted it. In fact, when I did paint, I think I just put masking tape on the monitor. I didn't even take the monitor out. So there you go, just 2 pieces of Gorilla Tape. Well, I probably put in a couple more, but it really is just Gorilla Tape holding it all together. And in my experience, that has worked fine. Now, maybe it'll get too hot and humid, and it'll want to slip around. Also, I did not put any back piece of wood on that. I just left that open just so I could get at it, and you can't tell anything. All right, so because the box is done, now I can go ahead and take apart the Tupperware kind of testing little control panel thing that I made. And here again, I'm showing you the little wood nub. And it really is just one little piece of wood that you put there to put your monitor on. And there it is, all wired up into the AWOL. And I'll have a link down below for what encoder works, at least works for this particular setup. You can see it can be a little bit tight, but it's not too bad. But if you want much wider than 19 or 20 inches on your build, you might have to get some extender cords for the 2 side pieces there. But I think that gives you a pretty good idea of just how much room you have in there if you wanted to put a bigger computer. You certainly could put a bigger computer. You could put a whole bunch of stuff in there. So, I mean, it's maybe a little overkill in terms of side, but again, it does help you when you're actually pushing on the game. Okay, so here I am showing the little wood lip that the monitor will go on. So that's it. Those 2 little pieces of wood are the only thing that holds the monitor on. And you can see I'm just down about 1 inch from the very top. And then that was enough to hold the monitor and let me put a piece of glass and still stay flush with the very top. Now, if you wanted to recess your TV, you could do that. That seemed like too much trouble to me, so I didn't do it. So obviously plenty of room for all your cords. You're going to need 2 HDMI cords, a little strip there. I have the power amp is actually, I mounted it in the rear back box so I could reach it a little easier, but you could put your amp right in here. You can see all kinds of room. And there's a little notch in the back there for me to reach in if I had to. Now again, you could put hinges on this. You could make it a little bit more accessible than I have. Okay, I've already painted the machine at this point. And I'll go ahead and just slip it in the monitor. And I was pretty lucky. It fit very snugly, but with enough wiggle room that I can pull up the glass and I can pull up the TV without too much trouble. Okay, now I'm just making sure it sits on that lip, and it does, no problem. And there you go. Okay, so now what I'm cutting is an aluminum right angle trim that I use to kind of keep the glass where it is, and just for aesthetics, really. I kind of build my my lockdown bar out of these aluminum pieces. It's not the most elegant solution in the world, but it is fairly cheap. I think I paid $38 for the thicker stock for aluminum, and then, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 for this. Again, an 8-foot section. So I cut one piece kind of to go at the bottom of the TV, one piece at the very front there, and that right there, that bigger piece, that's just aluminum flashing. And you can get a roll of, I think 50 feet or 20 feet. I think I bought that for $12 at an Ace. So it's pretty cheap, it's flexible, it matches the color. You could use other kind of stock. I looked at kind of more legit, thicker stock, but then it just became too hard to cut. This stuff's easy as heck to cut. I actually just use scissors to cut it. And it doesn't have to be exact either way, because you're going to have a little bit of wiggle room there with your aluminum trim there. So you don't have to be perfect when you cut that out. And you don't even need to have this. I just thought it looked good, and you could probably paint this if you wanted to. You could use something else. You could use plastic. You could use really almost anything. But I just got that because it was relatively cheap and it matched the color of all the other trim. All of this was pretty stable. I mean, I've never felt like the table was ever going to collapse or fall over or break or anything like that. I didn't have to put any other corner bracing in other than just the screws in those legs. Those legs act as corner bracing. And then when you start putting all these other little screws in, it really tightens down quite nicely. And here I am putting the side pieces on. And so what I did is I just sanded down the front there. So right where my hand is touching right now, I just sanded that, just using heavy grit sandpaper, and then just finer and finer and finer until it kind of matched kind of the feel of my hand and it wasn't too rough. And I just made sure that there wasn't anything, any burrs or anything on any of the cuts that I made. And of course, this right angle stuff is very sharp on the edges, so you'll definitely want to sand it, even if you don't kind of build your own lockdown bar there. You'll definitely want to sand it. And it sands real easy. It's aluminum, so it's nothing to be intimidated by. It's very easy to do. And I'm just putting in the final screws there, and that's pretty much it. And there you go. I haven't really done anything else to it. I will be putting on art. I think aliens. Here are two female USB receptacles. I think that was like $6 off of Amazon. This blue button I use for my table view. This is my escape. This is down and that is up. My main flipper button and my nudge. This is real glass. Had that cut at Lowe's. It's not tempered, it's just regular glass. That was $15. Okay, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little DIY project of mine. If you have any questions about how I did my project, or if you're doing your own and you want to pick my brain, please ask me a question down below and I'll do the best I can to help you. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this content. It really does help us. Love each other, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the Game Shack. Mwah! Say hi, Todd. Hi, Todd. A profit scheme, eh? He hates these cans.
Be sure to visit evilgeniusentertainment.com for exclusive content, swag, casting call news, and much, much more.